Hi everyone, hope we're all doing okay. You've all had a good weekend. Welcome back to GCSE English, where we are currently studying for paper 2, which is the non-fiction paper of the exam. Just a quick reminder that if it was your week to be in college this week, you need to go on Google Classroom and find the day and time of your lesson and click on that link there. That will take you to a Google Meet where your tutor or your tutors will be waiting to say hi, give you some instructions for today's session, answer any questions that you've got, and then hopefully direct you to this video. So if you have been engaging with us in remote learning, this should be your third week, week 17 of doing lessons this way. Hopefully so far they've been helpful for you, and I hope that this one is today too. So the first thing that you're going to need is to go to Google Classroom, where all the assignment documents are, and also this YouTube video that you're watching now. The topic, as you can see, is on the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. And the first task is, just want to give you a little bit of context about this, maybe find out what you already know about it. For those of you that watch TV, enjoy sort of mini-series, there was a mini-series about Chernobyl in 2019. It's very, very popular. It's got a really, really high rating on IMDb. Really, really fascinating. Not all completely factual, obviously, because it's fictional. So some of it's true, and some of it's obviously been created for TV entertainment purposes. But it's a really good portrayal of a tragedy, I guess. So I do recommend you watch it if you are interested in anything we talk about in this session. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, Chernobyl is, it refers to a nuclear accident that happened at the Chernobyl power plant in the Ukraine. Basically, one of the nuclear reactors in that power plant malfunctioned, and the core of that reactor basically set on fire and exploded, and started spewing radiation, fires, and all sorts of horrible things into the air for, I think it was about 9 days. It happened, I mean, it happened in 1986. So that's almost 35 years ago. So it's definitely before most of your time. I was about 2 months old, I think, at the time this happened. So don't worry, it's not something that I remember. Okay, so first thing I'd like you to do then is to head over to Google Classroom. Sorry if you've been here every week and you know how to do this, but just for the benefit of anybody that's not quite sure. So Google Classroom should look like this. Here we should have all those meets. So for example, if you're watching this on a Monday, you know your lesson is at 10:15. You should have clicked on that meet before you went to the work, just to check in with your tutors. Now, in terms of the work today, we're going to go to classwork, and it's week 17. I'm already there. Week 17, it's called Chernobyl, paper 2, and we're recapping question 4, and we're also going to be looking at speech writing today, so it's going to be a little bit different. We're doing both a question from the reading exam and also from the reading section and also from the writing section. Okay, so the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to find the Google form, the quiz, and open that up. It should look something like this. It's called, "What do you know about the Chernobyl disaster?" And it just says, read the questions and select the correct answer. So the first thing you're going to need to do is just put your name in there. And then don't worry about getting these questions right. So don't worry, I'm not expecting you to Google the correct answers or anything. Just thought it might be interesting for you to have a guess, if you don't really know much about this, at some of these answers. Because quite shocking, actually. some of the information in here. So there's only 8 questions, I think. And when you get to the end, if you just press submit, it will then come up and let you know how you scored and what all the correct answers were. Don't worry again about getting the answers right. Some of them you might just have to guess. I didn't know some of these, for example, that are asking you for figures like that. I didn't know some of these until I did some research to make this lesson. So don't worry, we just want to give you a little bit of context, okay? So if you just want to pause the video now and complete that Google form, and then once you've done it and you've looked at the answers, if you want to then rejoin us. Okay, hope you have done the Google form then, and it was quite interesting, some of the things that were in there. I'm not going to go through all the answers. You don't need me to do that because, as I said, you can just click View Score and you'll be able to go through them with yourself. Although, if there is anything that you want to talk about, because topics like this usually generate quite a lot of discussion, jump on that Google Meet. You could have a discussion with some of your peers and also with your tutors. Okay, so this is what we're doing today. We're going to recap how to answer question 4 in paper 2. So question 4 is the one that we did last week. And it was John Watson had a great admiration for Ayrton Senna. How far do you agree? So it was that one where we were evaluating how far we thought a writer expressed a specific viewpoint. And we had to do that by reading a text, inferring meaning from the words and phrases that were in there, and quoting those words and phrases as evidence. And we also, as always, had to organise our ideas into clear and coherent sentences. The second part of this lesson, as I said, because we're going to be looking at a writing task, which would be section B in paper 2, is planning and writing a speech. The reason I've chosen speech is because the text that we are reading today about Chernobyl is a speech. So I thought it might be helpful for you to practice writing a speech when you just looked at a speech. Before we do that, we're going to be recapping some of your persuasive language knowledge, identifying the correct audience and purpose, and also using appropriate language choices for that audience and purpose. So let's just focus on this first bit to start with, though, recapping question 4 in paper 2. Excuse me. Okay, so what we're going to do is we actually need to find the speech now that we're going to be looking at to recap question 4. Now, the speech is on Google Classroom. So if you go to that assignment, it should just be called Chernobyl speech. And if you open that, it should look something like this. I don't know if you want to pause the video just while you get that speech up. So the speech was delivered by a man named Mikhail Gorbachev in 1986. I'm not sure whether it was how many days after the disaster happened that this was delivered, but it was actually a televised speech. So I've snapshotted the picture of him reading it there on the TV. That's President Gorbachev. So he was the former president of the Soviet Union, at the time that this happened. And the other picture there is a picture of the reactor, the number 4 reactor here. So this is where the explosion took place. So you can see just a giant hole, yeah, where a nuclear reactor should be. Pretty scary. Okay, so hopefully everybody has got this speech. Oops, I'm on the wrong one. Chernobyl speech. So televised speech addressing the Chernobyl nuclear disaster by Mikhail Gorbachev. Okay, I'm happy to read it out. If you can follow along with me, that would be great. Good evening, comrades. As you all know, a misfortune has befallen us. The accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. It has painfully affected Soviet people and caused the anxiety of the international public. For the first time ever, we encountered in reality such a sinister force as nuclear energy that has escaped control. So what did happen? A specialist report, the reactor's capacity suddenly increased during a scheduled shutdown of the fourth unit. The considerable emission of steam and subsequent reaction resulted in the formation of hydrogen, its explosion, damage to the reactor, and the associated radioactive release. The seriousness of the situation was obvious. It was necessary to evaluate it urgently and competently as soon as we received reliable initial information. It was made available to Soviet people and sent through diplomatic channels of the governments and foreign countries. In the situation that had taken shape, we considered it our top priority duty, a duty of special importance, to ensure the safety of the population and provide effective assistance to those who had been affected by the accident. The inhabitants of the settlement near the station were evacuated within a matter of hours, and then, when it had become clear that there was a potential threat to the health of people in the adjoining zone, they were moved to safe areas. They were also moved to safe areas. Nevertheless, the measures that were taken failed to protect many people. 2 died at the time of the accident, and as of today, 299 people were in hospital diagnosed as having radiation disease of varying degree of gravity. 7 of them have died. Every possible treatment is being given to the rest. The best scientific and medical specialists of the country, specialized clinics in Moscow and other cities are taking part in treating them and have at their disposal the most modern means of medicine. Although the most serious consequences have been averted, the end is not yet. It is not the time to rest. Extensive and long work still lies ahead. The level of radiation in the station's zone and on the territory in the immediate vicinity still remains dangerous for human health. On behalf of the Soviet government, I express profound condolences to the families and relatives of the deceased, to the work collectives, to all those who have suffered from this misfortune, who have suffered personal loss. The Soviet government will take care of the families of those who died and who suffered. I must say that people have acted and are continuing to act heroically and selflessly. I think we will have an opportunity to name these courageous people and assess their exploit worthily. It is too early to pass final judgment on the cause of the accident. However, all aspects of the problem, design, projecting, operation, and technical, are under the close scrutiny of the Government Commission. It goes without saying that when the investigation of the accident is completed, all the necessary conclusions will be drawn and measures will be taken, ruling out a repetition of anything of this sort. Okay, so that is the text that we are going to be reading again and going to be using to answer the questions. Now, those of you that are working on a Google Doc, obviously, when you start your question, if you want to highlight things in your text, you can do that in a couple of different ways. You can actually highlight the text and you can change the text color, or you can maybe just grab the highlighting tool and do it like that. Obviously, if you were in an exam situation, it would be on paper normally, wouldn't it? And you'd be able to use a physical highlighter. Okay, so that's the speech delivered by President Gorbachev. So that's obviously translated into English. So apologies if I sounded a little bit awkward in saying some of that. Doesn't flow quite as well, I think, if it was maybe written in English. Okay, so let's have a look at question 4. So we'll just recap what we've got to do, and then I'll give you the actual question that we're going to attempt. So it's the how far do you agree question, and it's worth 10 marks to you in an exam. So it's quite an important one. Now you're going to be given a statement. So for example, I'll just use the one we were talking about before. The writer creates the impression that Instagram is better than Snapchat. How far do you agree? Last week, John Watson has great admiration for Ayrton Senna. How far do you agree? Okay, this one is going to be exactly the same as that, but obviously it's going to be about Chernobyl. So what you need to do is you need to read the question carefully and you need to decide whether you agree or disagree, or maybe it's a mixture of both, about how far the writer has expressed that viewpoint, the viewpoint that's expressed in the question. So remember, it's not asking you personally, how far do you agree with the question? It's saying, how far do you think the writer agrees with the question? You will track through that text, either part of the text or the whole text, depending on what the question tells you. Pick out the keywords and phrases that support your agreeing or disagreeing, because they're going to be what you quote. They're going to be your evidence. So let's have a look at the question. In the first 5 paragraphs, Gorbachev gives the impression that the accident at Chernobyl was incredibly serious. How far do you agree with the statement? You should comment on what Gorbachev says and how he says it. Okay, so remember, it's not saying, do we think it was serious? It's saying, how far do we agree that Gorbachev gives the impression that the accident was incredibly serious? So we need to look at his words and we need to see whether any of them imply that that accident was really serious for whatever reason. Now, what's interesting about this and different from last week is that this says in the first 5 paragraphs. That's really important. Remember in paper 1, when it tells you to look from lines 1 to 9, and if you take something out of those lines, no marks, it's exactly the same situation here. If it's the first 5 paragraphs only, that is all that we can use. That's really important that you remember that. What I would do if I was in an exam is I would simply draw a line. I would fold up my paper. I would make sure that I could only see the first 5 paragraphs, or that there was a big line or something stopping me from going beyond those first 5 paragraphs. Now, when I say 5 paragraphs, I am excluding the salutation here, good evening, comrades. Okay, I'm just talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's the paragraph that ends human health. Okay, so only the first 5 paragraphs. So what you need to do now is you need to pause this video and you need to grab your highlighter if you're on paper, or maybe the highlighting tool on Google Docs, as I demonstrated before, and go through this and see if you can find some evidence of whether this was incredibly serious based on what Gorbachev says, or whether it wasn't, okay? Because remember, you can agree or disagree. And your questions here, Gorbachev creates the impression the accident was incredibly serious. How far do you agree? You might want to pause the video now to do some of that highlighting and then rejoin it when you think you've got something at least from every single paragraph. Remember, the target that we usually aim for a 10-mark question is at least 8 different points supported by 8 different quotes. 2 examples I'm going to show you just to start you off if you're struggling. The first quote I have chosen is painfully. That's it, just one word. Firstly, I agree that Gorbachev presents the accident as incredibly serious, as he says it has painfully affected the Soviet people, suggesting the effects of it have been harmful. So nice and simple. Yeah, yes, I agree it's serious, because if it wasn't serious, he wouldn't be saying it's painfully affected people, would he? And pain usually is synonymous with harm. Secondly, He suggests the accident had a worldwide impact because it caused the anxiety of the international public. Now, it had to be serious if it caused anxiety for the international public. So not just locally where this happened, the entire world was anxious about this. So that to me implies that this was a very serious situation. So that's why I'm using that one. So what is underlined is what I am inferring from his words. And his words, remember, are what I've got in speech marks in red there. So if you have highlighted some stuff of your own already and you are ready to write a response to this question, I want you to finish the rest of the answer. If you want to use those first two examples, by all means, go for it. Your target is to try and make 8 different points that either agree or disagree that the accident was really serious, supported by 8 different quotes showing that seriousness. Now, as I told you last week, there is absolutely no point in spinning forward this video and pausing when I actually go through some of the correct answers and copying them down, either in your own words or word for word, because that doesn't help me or anybody else understand what you know and what you can do. And it certainly doesn't help you know what you can do and what you can't do. And it doesn't help you develop your skills. And that is why we're here. If you write 2 points and then you go, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do, I can't find anything else in the text, that's when you need to get back on that Google Meet and say to whoever your tutor is, even if it's you want to have a private conversation, if there's other people on there, we can do that. We can have a breakout room and just say, look, I'm really struggling. Can you help me? That is why we're on that Google Meet. Okay. That is our only reason. Our sole purpose is to help you with this. Okay. So please don't suffer in silence. Get on that Google Meet and ask for some help if you need it. Okay. So pause the video here for me. I'd give yourself a maximum of 20 minutes, definitely no more than 20 minutes, and see how many points you can make. Okay, your target is 8. Think about how many you made last week. Can you make one more? 8 points is your goal. Pause it now. Okay, well done. Hopefully you have all timed yourselves and you've had a go at question 4. So it said the first 5 paragraphs give us the impression that the accident at Chernobyl was incredibly serious. How far do we agree? And we had to comment on what Gorbachev said and how he said it. The first 2 examples I gave you were that he said that it was serious because it had painfully affected the people and also it had had a worldwide impact. So what else could we have said? Well, thirdly, he calls nuclear energy a sinister force that has escaped control. Now, that to me suggests the situation is very frightening because sinister is something that's creepy and scary. And the fact that it's escaped control is even more frightening because it means they don't have any control of that situation. So almost personifying the nuclear energy there, saying it's escaped as if it's got a mind of its own, which is scary because it means they can't contain it. Next, he explicitly states that the accident was serious. So the quote there, the seriousness of the situation was obvious. Every single person should have got that one. There is nothing to say about that one. It's so explicit. It's so obvious. Yeah, Gorbachev just says the seriousness of the situation was obvious. All right, next, he says the accident needed to be evaluated urgently. Now, the word urgently to me suggests this was an emergency situation and needed immediate attention. If something is an emergency, it's very serious, isn't it? Okay, so just that word urgently is really good there. In addition, The fact that Gorbachev says people were evacuated within a matter of hours also shows how serious the accident was to the people living nearby. So this is a similar point to this one here. This one's saying that it was an emergency situation and needed to be sorted out urgently. This one says that people nearby had to be evacuated within a matter of hours. So again, we've got that idea of urgency is needed, and people had to be evacuated from their homes. It was that serious. Okay, what else could we have said? There were deaths involved as a result. What's more serious than it causing fatalities? So 2 people died at the time of the accident and 7 of them have died from radiation. He also said it affected the health of 229 people who were in hospital diagnosed as having radiation disease. So that's also very serious, isn't it? That's quite a large number, 229 people. Gorbachev also suggests that the threat to these people's lives is very serious because they had to call in the best medical specialists and they're having to use the most modern means of medicine. So if they need the best and the most modern means, this must be really bad. It must be really serious if they've got to call in the big guns in order to help these people stay alive. And finally then, the seriousness of the accident is suggested when Gorbachev says the situation will take a long time to recover from, because he says extensive and long work still lies ahead. Now, if this wasn't serious, it would be able to be over and done with, you know, within a couple of days, maybe the same day. Well, if extensive and long work still lies ahead, that means it's obviously very serious. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then the 2 I gave you at the beginning. So I've managed to find 10 in total, and there are probably more. If you're looking through your answers and you've got some that are similar to mine, or maybe you've got some that are different, excellent. If you're looking at mine and thinking, oh, I don't think I've done this right, jump on that Google Meet, please. Ask your tutors to have a look at your work, get some feedback, ask any questions that you're not sure about. Please do not be sat at this page copying out the answers. There is absolutely no point in doing that. Doesn't help anybody. And remember, these are not gospel. These are not the answers you should have written down. These are just some of the things you could have said. Anything that has got a quote to support it and is answering the question correctly will get you a mark, a correct tick, a response in an exam situation. Okay, and remember, it's out of 10. So we want to try and at least be making 8 points supported by 8 different quotes. Okay, well done. So something that people seem to be skipping for some reason, this is just as important as the task itself. If you just decided to skip over this last week, please make sure you do it now. The self-assessment is an opportunity for you to reflect on what you have just done. If you're not reflecting on the work that you're doing, you're not considering whether you're improving. So what you need to do is you need to check, first of all, have you answered the question correctly? The reason that I give you those exemplar responses is so that you've got something to compare your answers to. So in comparison to mine, have you done the same sort of thing? Have you talked about the seriousness of the accident, and have you agreed or disagreed in terms of how much has Gorbachev given us that impression? For every point that you've made, have you quoted what he says? You don't have to write your quote in red, but you do need to make sure there are quote marks around it to show what you are quoting from the text is different to your words. Now, tracking from the beginning to the end. Now here, it should be the beginning to the end of those first 5 paragraphs, remember? So if you've gone beyond the 5 paragraphs, you're not going to be able to get marks for any evidence you've used beyond that 5th one. And finally, how many points have you made? The target was 8. Have you made a range? If you're scoring 5 out of 10 at this point in the year, that's good. That's where we want you to be. 4 out of 10 even, okay? If you are still only making 1, 2, or 3 points of your own, this is something that you need to keep practicing. Possibly with the catch-up coaches, if you are nominated to hang out with them, or maybe you need to just go over some of these lessons that are on Classroom, or maybe find some of the ILP resources that are about inferring meaning, and time yourself. Practice makes perfect. Okay, so give yourself some feedback, please. I want to know what you think you've mastered and also what you need to develop. So on the sheet where you are responding to this, so I'll just show you that now. I think I've done it right this week. Week 17, your answers. So it says question 4. So what you should be doing here, or what you should have already done, is firstly, I agree. So your answers to question 4 should all have been written here. And for the final bit, this self-assessment that we're talking about, when we say, what have I mastered? This is where I want you to actually write something down. Some people have done this brilliantly, and they've used this to help them. They've talked about making quotes shorter. They've talked about making more points. They've talked about tracking through the text a little bit better. Some people just haven't written anything at all. You need to reflect on your work, okay? So these can help us form targets as well, particularly on the second one, okay? What do we still need to develop? That's a really important one. So you're aware of your strengths and also your weaknesses, okay? So pause the video here for me, please. Do that self-assessment. Maybe if you're struggling with this part and you're not sure here, maybe that's where you need to get on that Google Meet now and ask your tutors to give them your work so they can give you an idea of what they think you've done well and what you still need to develop. And then maybe you consider whether you agree with that or not. Okay, so pause the video now and just have a go at that self-assessment reflection, please. Okay, so we've just done paper 2, question 4, that how far do you agree question. It will always be presented that way. You'll always be given a statement. The one we've just done about President Gorbachev giving us the impression that the accident at Chernobyl was very serious. How far do we agree? Remember, we are asking, you're being asked whether you agree whether that writer has expressed that viewpoint or not. It's not whether you personally agree with what they're saying. It's whether you think they are saying that or whether they're not saying that. Okay, so whether you agree with it and whether you don't agree that they've said it. You need to make sure that you quote keywords and phrases to support every single point that you make. Remember, no quotes, no marks. And you may be asked to consider just part of the extract, like we were, the first 5 paragraphs, or the extract as a whole. And it's a 10 marker. It's an important question. Yeah, I don't think I mentioned this earlier. It's just like paper 1, question 5, almost an identical question. We're just dealing with different genres of text. All right, brilliant. So we've done the learning objectives for the first part of the lesson now. We've done the evaluation and we've organised our ideas into clear and coherent sentences. Second part of the lesson this week is we're going to be doing a writing task. So as I said, we're going to be planning and writing a speech. Now, you've had an example of a speech read to you, the speech by President Gorbachev. So you can see from a layout point of view, all you need to do, let me get the speech up again. all you need to do is give your speech a title. Always a good idea to have a salutation, basically a greeting, say hello to the people that you're talking to. And then the only other thing you need to worry about is just making sure you write in paragraphs. Okay, so speeches in terms of layout are quite simple. So we're going to recap knowledge of persuasive language, because speeches generally try and persuade us of things. We're going to identify the correct purpose, audience, and format, and then we're going to write this speech, hopefully using appropriate language choices for that audience and purpose. Okay, anytime, obviously, you need a little break, just pause the video, have a walk around, have a quick break, go and make yourself a drink, come back, and then you can press play. Okay, so section B of paper 2 tests your ability to write transactional pieces of writing, so basically non-fiction texts. Now, these are the most common things that you are asked to write in the EDUQAS exam: a speech, a letter, an article, travel writings appeared before, and also reviews. Okay, so we've got a couple of images of those things on here. The one that we're going to do today is the speech. So let's have a look. Oops. So speeches are often designed to persuade people of something, convince people of ideas. Politicians use a lot of persuasive language. That's why I've chosen a picture in there of Boris Johnson. Some politicians' speeches could be quite inspiring. Others can be quite depressing, depending on who's written the speech and also who's delivering it. What I want to know is, how many persuasive language devices do you know? So you've probably done these a lot in school, or if you were with us last year at college, you've probably been revising these for a couple of years. The reason that persuasive devices are useful is because if you know what they are, you can use them in your own speeches, because sometimes they do work. Another benefit of being able to identify these, of course, is to then be able to see when they're being used by other people, possibly to manipulate you. And politicians, I think, is a really good example. Don't believe everything you hear, because some of it is just persuasive language. And language, as we know, is very powerful. All right. So what we're going to do to see what you know is, I want you to fill in this name the technique. So it's a recap sheet here. Now, each example, 1 to 8, gives you a sentence which includes a persuasive language device. And I want you to write what technique you think is being used where we've got this sort of blank at the beginning. Now, each technique only appears once, and they're all in this little bank at the top. Okay, so on Google Classroom, this is called Name the Technique, Google Doc. For some of you, these documents might be up here in the top right, where above where it says Turnitin. It might not look exactly the same as mine. Okay, so Name the Technique is the one that you need open, and it looks something like this. So the first one, you could be debt-free in a matter of months. I'm going to do you a favor here, and I'm going to help you out and start you off. Direct address is the first one. You. The reader is being directly addressed. So the use of that personal pronoun makes us feel like someone's talking to us, just us. So it feels like it's a personal thing. Don't worry about deleting the lines or anything. You can get rid of the line completely if you want to. So you can write in there. Yeah, like that. Depends how pretty you want it to look. Doesn't matter. You've all got your own copy, so you can do what you like. I'm just showing you that. Okay. And so you would just do the same for each one. So number 2, number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so if you want to pause the video now, have a go at that. That's going to be something that you turn in at the end. I recommend that you spend about 5 minutes doing that. If you finish before the 5 minutes, be useful just to check your answers. Okay, well done. So hopefully some of that was useful for you. I'm not going to go through the answers right now. I think we might release the answers next week for those. Or maybe we could give you the answers in your feedback. I just want to alleviate the issue of somebody coming to this section and then just filling it in. I really, really want to make sure that you are doing a little bit of work today and you are figuring some of these things out for yourself. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to write a speech. Well, who are we going to write it to? So this is where we need to read what's on our exam paper. And when they ask you to write a speech, it's often presented like this. They're going to give you like a statement. So this is our statement we're going to work with. It is everyone's responsibility to do what they can to protect the environment. Okay, so that's your statement. So have a think about that for a few minutes. Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Are you completely indifferent? Do you not give a monkeys about the environment? Are you really passionate about the environment? Consider that statement. And here's the task. You have been asked to give a talk to persuade your peers of your opinion on the above statement. So a couple of things here. When EDUQAS say give a talk, all that means is write a speech. So they want you to write a speech to persuade your peers of your opinion on the above statement. So can we see the purpose, the audience, and the format here? Can we see the why, the who, and the what? Hopefully we can. Can you just pause this video for a couple of minutes and write down what you think the purpose? So why are you writing this? The audience, who are you writing this for? And format, what are you writing? The format should be the easiest one because it's right there on the screen. Okay, hopefully you figured out that the purpose was, not very big that, the purpose was to persuade. It was in bold, wasn't it? Why are we writing? We're writing to persuade people. So we want to convince them of whatever we're saying is true. That's why I asked you to do some persuasive language recapping. So what we want to try and do is use some of these persuasive devices to try and fulfill the purpose of our speech. Who are we writing to? So who's our audience? Well, it says peers. Remember, your peers are people like you. So if you are a college student studying GCSE English, your peers will also be college students studying GCSE English. Maybe people of a similar age to you, people with similar interests to you. And finally, the format, what are you writing? Well, you're writing a speech, aren't you? Yeah, that is the format. And we talked about how that needed to be laid out. You need a title and it needs to be paragraphed. Okay. Really, we should also be saying hello to our audience when we start a speech, just because conventionally, that's usually how speeches start. So we've got figured out here the purpose, the audience, and the speech. Now I've put students there as the audience because I'm just working on the assumption that we're all studying. That's why we're watching this video. So it might be helpful to sort of tailor your arguments to things that students are interested in. And who's best to know that than you guys, because you are students. So we're writing to persuade, we want a student audience, and we are writing a speech. Now, what I'm going to recommend is that you spend about 5 minutes doing a plan here of exactly what you are going to be talking about in each paragraph. Now I've got 5 different bubbles here. This is how I do a plan. I do like a little, sometimes it's a spider diagram, or I do a little cycle sort of diagram like this. And in the top one, I'd start with my sort of introduction, if you like, my introductory paragraph, or maybe I'd make a note of the layout features that I needed to remember or to say hello. And then I would think about what I'm going to write in my first paragraph, my second paragraph, my third paragraph, and my fourth paragraph. My fourth paragraph, my last paragraph might be my conclusion, where I just sum up everything that I've already said. Now, if you want to do a plan like this, I've actually got a document on Google Classroom which says planning a speech. And on there, this little diagram, I've done a plan for the speech that I would write. So you can see my paragraph 1 is my introduction. So I've put introduce yourself. What are you going to talk about and why? That's fair enough for a speech, isn't it? And you can see there in the example speech that I've written, it says, "Good morning, fellow students. Today, I'd like to talk to you about something that is the largest trending topic on Twitter, climate change." I don't know if it is the largest trending topic on Twitter. I just think students that are quite young and hip tend to use Twitter. So I thought it might be relevant for my audience, because remember, I've got my audience, my purpose, and my format in mind. As you can see in that first paragraph, I've gone on to expand. I'm writing a little bit more, aren't I? Climate change is not just an issue that scientists talk about anymore. It is an issue that is being talked about everywhere and by everyone. Teachers, students, politicians, celebrities, newsreaders. It seems everyone wants us to use less plastic, take fewer flights, reuse our coffee cups, recycle our clothes, eat less meat, and plant more trees. Why? For good reason. Okay, hopefully by now you can see that I've been using some persuasive language devices here, and I've also picked some of them out. So I'm listing quite a lot. Teachers, students, politicians, celebrities. I've got a rhetorical question here. Why? I'm giving another list here, aren't I? Taking fewer flights, reusing our coffee cups. And I've also tried to use examples of things that I think people of my age group would be doing, like you should be doing. No one's taken any flights anywhere at the moment, but when I wrote this, we were. Reusing coffee cups. I go to Starbucks, I go to Costa. I'm sure some of you guys do. So it's an audience relevant example. Recycling clothes, eating less meat, planting more trees. They're all things that could relate to the audience that we're writing for. Okay. They're also really specific examples that relate to the environment, that relate to climate change in this sense, which is why I've used them. Okay, and then paragraph 2. What are we currently doing to the environment that is having a negative impact? Now, I'm sure that you've surfed the internet enough or watched the news enough or read a newspaper enough to know that there's lots of things that we're doing that is not great for the environment, and plastic seems to be the most sort of talked about one at the moment. So perhaps you could just take one example, for example, which would be the fact that we're dumping all this plastic in landfill excuse me, and it's going into the oceans. So there's lots of videos of turtles, seals, ducks, any sort of sea life with plastic netting stuck to them, or things wrapped around their beaks. Seen lots of things actually with face masks at the moment, those disposable face masks, and of course they've got plastic in them. And that is not helping. Maybe that could be a current issue that you decide to focus on. Maybe it's the idea that we need to eat less meat, or that we all need to become vegetarian, because the amount of animals that we keep on land, so the amount of livestock that we have, creates so much CO2 that if we all stopped eating meat, we could help slow climate change a lot. So there might be lots and lots of different things that you want to talk about, or maybe you could just focus on one of those things. It's up to you. That doesn't even have to be your paragraph 2. That was just mine. Paragraph 3, why is it important to protect the environment? Well, I've talked a little bit about this one in this paragraph. I know that is kind of my paragraph 2 here, but just for the purpose of demonstrating to you, this is what I would have for paragraph 3. So I've put it has now become a matter of survival that we all do what we can to protect the environment. And I believe that it is everyone's responsibility to do this. Where have you heard that before? I believe it's everybody's responsibility to do this. Let's have a look. Oh, there it is. It is everyone's responsibility to do what they can to protect the environment. So I'm talking actually now about what's in the question. Individuals such as you and I, organisations and governments, all need to come together and join hands to protect what is left of our planet so that the future is not wiped out before it's too late. Listen, I sound like a politician, don't I? It's all those rhetorical devices that I'm using. It's all those persuasive language devices. So it's a matter of survival. It's very dramatic. I'm using emotive language to tug on your heartstrings. I'm talking about what's left of our planet before it's too late, wiped out. So it very, very dramatic language. I'm exaggerating, I'm going over the top. We need to join hands as well. So hopefully you're imagining visuals of us all coming together and uniting. I've also used some direct address. You and I. Remember, direct address is when you directly address the reader, making it feel like they're talking to you specifically. Paragraph 4, what can we do to change? And I've put give specific examples. So this is where you might start talking about specifically what we need to do to stop climate change wiping us all out. So whether that's we need to recycle our coffee cups, or we need to stop putting so much in landfill. Maybe it's the corporations that need to start making packaging of the things that we buy and consume that is 100% recyclable. Maybe you want to focus on the transport aspect of it, for example, and you want to talk about everybody should have an electric car by 2025. Remember, it's completely up to you because it's your speech. And then paragraph 5, which would be the conclusion. Now, this is going to be the same for most things. It's just where you reiterate what your main point is and leave the reader thinking about what you want them to think about. It could be a rhetorical question that you want them to ponder. It could be a really emotive statement that you want to stick in their mind. Okay, so if you want to steal some of the things on here, that is absolutely fine. But please, this is just to help you with the planning. Don't write the speech just by copying all of this, because again, that would be completely pointless. It needs to be your words. It needs to be your use of persuasive language, your turn of phrase. Okay, so that's where that is on Google Classroom if you would like to use it to help you inform your speech. But I would definitely just spend 5 minutes, no more than 10 minutes, just doing a plan of what you want to say in each of your bullet points. In each of your paragraphs, sorry, not bullet points. So if you just want to pause the video there for at least 5 minutes, do your plan, and then we will resume. Okay, so here's the example that I was just showing you of what I've written as an example, if anybody's really, really struggling and they just want to see what kind of thing that they could write. Now, remember, we do have the speech from President Gorbachev that we read about Chernobyl. And I think although his speech didn't have a title, I've got Save the Environment, Save Life. Hopefully you're thinking, oh, look, Michelle's used a rhetorical device there in the title of repetition, save and save. I'm trying to emphasize the idea that we can save each other here by saving the environment. But Gorbachev did address his audience, didn't he? I think he said, "Good evening, fellow comrades." Now, I've said, "Good morning, fellow students." So I'm pretending to be a student, and I've decided the time of day is morning. If you want it to be afternoon, if you want it to be evening, that's completely fine. Maybe you don't even want to start that way. You might want to start with a rhetorical question. You might just want to say, "Hello, everybody, my name is." As long as it sounds like you are giving a talk, it's fine. I'm not going to read all this again. You can have a look at it on that plan, or you can read it again here if you just pause the video. I just want to stress, I do not want you to copy this. I don't even want you to copy it just a little bit and put your own and just use a thesaurus and change some of the words. This is just an example of something you could do. It needs to be your work that is completed and handed in today. Okay, so I would like you now, you've got a plan, to take 25 minutes. So set a stopwatch on your phone, set a timer on one of your tabs on the internet, or get somebody in your house to tell you when 25 minutes is up, and I want you to try and write your speech. So let's just go over everything we've concluded so far. Our purpose is to persuade the people that we are speaking for, our audience, who are students, our peers, that you are right on your opinion on this statement. Now, my opinion was very pro the environment. I do think it's everybody's responsibility to do what they can to protect the environment, because there's only one world. Once this one's done, we're all done, aren't we? You might have a different opinion to me. Maybe you don't think it's everyone's responsibility. Maybe you think using your bag for life every week when you do your Tesco shop weekly is doing absolutely nothing for the environment, and that it's actually Tesco, big corporations like that, who need to start doing a bit more. Now, arguably at the supermarkets, there's no plastic bags anymore, is there? Could we talk about that as a step in the right direction? Maybe something you could use. So it's your opinion on that statement. So you could maybe disagree with that statement if you wanted to. Again, up to you. But you've been asked to give a talk, and give a talk, remember, means write a speech to persuade your peers of your opinion on this. So use that plan, and I want you to write your speech. So use my example to help you. Remember, help, not to copy it if you need it. But we want a correct layout. So I want a title of your speech, and I want it paragraphed. And every time you start talking about a new thing, we need to leave a new line. We should aim for a minimum of 4 paragraphs. That's why I did that little plan there with 5, because you always know that your last one is going to be your conclusion, and you shouldn't bring up anything new in a conclusion. But your 4 paragraphs are to talk about what you want to talk about. Using specific and personal examples where possible. So we use lots of specific examples here. Using less plastic, taking fewer flights, planting more trees. This bit was a little bit more general because I was going for the emotive language. But this top paragraph here was very specific, largest trending topic on Twitter. So make sure you've got some really specific and personal examples in there. And remember, they don't have to be true. When I say use a personal example, and you think, well, I haven't got a personal example to use, well, make it up. Yeah, you know somebody that knows somebody that's set up a completely that's set up their own business, and they sell things that are made from 100% recyclable products. There's trainers, isn't there? Adidas have some trainers on the market that are made from ocean plastic. You could give examples like that. You can make things up. It doesn't have to be true. If you're in an exam, the examiner's not going to be Googling the examples that you give to see whether they're fact or fiction. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not. And finally, we need to try and make sure we're using persuasive language devices in order to engage our readers. So think about and maybe have a quick look back at that persuasive devices recap that you filled in, and also have a look at some of the devices that I've used. Don't bombard your reader necessarily to the point where it's very generic and loses that personal touch to it, but definitely try and get some of those devices in there. It will help to persuade. Okay, so pause this video for me, give yourself 25 minutes, write your speech, and then we'll come to the proofreading part of it together. Okay, well done everybody. Hopefully we have written our speech. And we've got a minimum of 4 paragraphs. We've included some persuasive devices, specific and personal examples, and now we're ready to do some proofreading before we can turn it in. Remember, proofreading, I know it's a little bit boring, but it's so important because when you write a lengthy piece of work, it's very easy to make silly mistakes. And if you haven't got a spell check on correcting you all the time, it's even more likely that you'll make mistakes. Everybody does it. I do it a lot. I'm sure you're no different. So there's a couple of prompts on here that I want you to look for. So first one, make sure everything makes sense. Have you written in paragraphs? Have we got basic punctuation? So capital letters, full stops, or question marks if you're asking rhetorical questions. Are there any words that you know definitely that you've spelt wrong because you don't know how to spell them? Maybe make a note of them. Get on Google Meet. See if you can talk to your tutors about how to spell a word. If you want to just go ahead and Google things on an online dictionary, that's great, but make a note of that word somewhere so you know to practice it. And finally, something that I see a lot, comma splicing. If you're not sure what comma splicing is, you need to head over to the resources for the ILP and find the one about comma splicing so you can do a little bit of work on that. Okay, so again, can you just pause the video for 5 minutes here, check for these things or anything else that you know you do. For example, a lot of people, when they're writing I as the personal pronoun, I did this, I did that, I think this, that should always be a capital letter when it's on its own, okay? Don't make the mistake of doing a lowercase I. So just pause the video for 5 minutes and do some proofreading for me. Okay, well done. Hopefully we've made some amendments or we've asked any questions or we've read anything that we need to read in order to inform us a little bit better about spelling, grammar or punctuation. So the last thing that I want you to do is I just want you to go back to that speech and I want you to check that you have a title. This relates to the format. Did you give your speech a title? Even if it was simple, that is fine. Can you just highlight? Can you also find where you've made any specific or personal examples in there and highlight them? You could do this with the highlighting tool on Google Docs, or if you're working on paper, obviously just get yourself a highlighter pen. And finally, can you highlight 4 persuasive language devices you have used to engage the reader? Now, this is part of the video where, as I said in the other task, people seem to skip this because they think it's not important. It is, because this is going to be where it shows us if you've missed something out. So if you can't highlight your title, it's because you haven't written one. Therefore, we need to work on that. If you can't highlight any specific or personal examples, it means you haven't included any, and that's something we need to work on. If you can't highlight 4 persuasive devices, it means you haven't included any, and that's something that you need to work on. Finally, I know I've already asked you to check for this in the proofreading part of it, but can you just check that you've written at least 4 paragraphs? That will be the expected word count at GCSE. This is all going to help you with those last 2 questions at the bottom, which is the reflection. What went well today? and what did you find difficult? So if you go to the sheet that you've responded on, which is your week 17, your answers, once you've answered this question 4, somewhere down here, you should have written your speech. So all you need to do is what went well, what do I need to work on, or what did I find difficult, or what do I need to develop? And I actually need you to write something here. So you know what it is that you're doing. You've also got possibly targets that we can write up on Pro Portal for you, Pro Monitor for me. So make sure that you complete that aspect of this lesson. It's not optional. It's actually just as important as the main task. So pause this video, underneath where you've written your speech, check, highlight, and give yourself some feedback for the task you've completed today. Okay, well done everyone. So in terms of what we've just completed, we have planned and we have written a speech. So we recap the knowledge of persuasive devices first, we identified the correct purpose, audience and format, and hopefully we've used appropriate language choices for that audience and purpose. So what you need to do now is everything that you've used in this session, you need to make sure you turn it in on Google Classroom, where that purple button is, where it says turn it in, so that your tutors can mark it and give you some feedback. Okay, I hope the lesson was helpful for you today. Well done for your hard work. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next time.